With the camp getting ready to depart, everyone was slowly taking down their tents and storing all of the supplies back onto the wagons. Considering how far away the ruins were, the princess was going to need to make a stop by a town on the way there. Summoning a map, he looked at the route that they were going to take. The biggest part that he noticed was the Great Desert, with how it spanned nearly the entire continent. On the other side of it, there were other kingdoms and empires, but with how large the desert was, it was nearly impossible to cross. A month after he created his city, Han learned that there were some caravans that made their way through the desert to help supply the scattered nomadic tribes. It was amazing how those tribes were able to survive in that hellish environment. Even his city was only able to thrive due to his altering the environment. For the kingdom, the Great Desert provided a natural barrier and allowed the kingdom to focus on the empire and the kingdoms to its sides. About when they would be running low on supplies, the group would find a medium-sized town right on the edge of the kingdom. He was curious as to what this town would look like, being so close to the Elven Kingdom. Once they crossed into the Elven Kingdom, there would be only a week of travel before they entered the sinking swamp. Inside of the swamp would be a couple of days of travel. While watching the camp and everyone being so busy, he didn't notice the commotion that was occurring. It wasn't until the shouting grew louder that he turned around and saw two groups facing one another. Seeing what was happening, Han could only sigh in annoyance. Walking over to where the commotion was happening, he watched as the annoying team leader was shouting at Brittany and Selestra. When he got closer, he could hear what was happening. "What the hell is that thing on your neck?" Frank could be heard shouting. "I received it from E. I do not know why you are shouting at me," Selestra answered. "You don't know why I'm shouting at you?" he sarcastically replied, looking frustrated. "You're a part of my team, and suddenly I see you wearing some kind of collar after you spent a night in that scum's tent?" He stabbed with his index finger, pointing at the source of all of his anger. "What does me being a part of the team have to do with what I do on my own time?" she asked, clearly confused at why Frank was acting the way he was. "Let it go, Frank. Who Selestra wants to spend her time with is her business, not ours." The bunny-eared woman spoke to Frank. Han had learned that her name was Sarah. From what Selestra told her, she and Sarah were pretty close and had a good friendship. "I'm the team leader. I'll decide what is relevant when it comes to my team," Frank yelled, shoving Sarah. "How can you be okay with this? You and I were the ones who trained her and helped turn her into an A-rank adventurer, and now you're okay with her spending time with that slime? He's obviously just using her, and now she's acting like some kind of slut," he accused. A sound of a slap could be heard, as Selestra stood there panting hard and looking furious. "I do not know why you are acting like this, but I will not have you demean my relationship with E. I love E, and I'm happy. You do not have a say on who I belong to." Looking at Sarah, she said, "I do not think I can stay a part of this group. I hope that you can understand, and I hope I can still consider you my friend." Nodding her head, Sarah went to hug Selestra. "I'm happy that you found someone. I'm sorry that things turned out this way, but you can always consider me to be a friend." Pulling away from Selestra, Sarah turned around to the team and said, "Take Frank back to the wagon. One of you will need to drive the wagon that Frank was driving. I do not think it's a good idea to have him take the role considering how irrational and emotional he's being." Han was impressed with how Sarah was able to calmly settle everything, looking like a professional. Feeling Han's eyes on her, she glanced over at him and gave him a nod, which said that she was sorry about everything. He gave her a shrug to communicate and acknowledge that shit happens and there was no hard feelings. Though he could understand what Frank was feeling, it was never good to try and control someone against their wishes. The relationship between Frank and Selestra was clearly a professional one, though Frank may have thought that something would blossom. Frank just misunderstood how close the two of them were, and tried to force it into something that it wasn't. Approaching his group, Han was happy to see that all of his companions were alert and ready to jump in to neutralize the situation. It meant that Selestra was accepted into their small family. With just his eyes, he noticed that each of the shadow guards were hiding in the shadows, also ready to jump in. If Frank were able to see the sheer number of people he was playing with, he would have likely backed off immediately. Anaklis and Eurasia were trying to console Selestra, both of them looking like older sisters trying to cheer up a precious younger sister. Queen was looking at where the adventurers were located with utter contempt and disdain. Brittany, seeing Han walking towards them, approached him to say, "Master, there's a slight issue, but we were able to contain it. I think you should go to Selestra and cheer her up. The conflict seems to have left her a bit shaken." "Thank you, Brittany," he told her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Reaching where Selestra and the Jungle Sisters were, Han asked, "Are you okay?" Hearing his voice, Selestra looked up and rushed into his arms, crying, "Am I a bad person?" she asked, sobbing into his chest. "Of course not," he assured her, stroking her hair. "There is no need to worry about people like him. Your friend, Sarah, still cares about you, so do not concern yourself with such a selfish man." Taking her chin with his hand, he lifted it up so that she could see his face. "Anyways, you already belong to a selfish man," he gently said to her, as he lowered his head to kiss her. Lifting up his head, he saw that she was blushing with a smile on her face. "I only belong to E," she said, giving him a hug. It had been several weeks since they started their journey towards the ruins. Though the trip started off on a rough patch after the incident with Frank and Selestra, it has gotten better. Frank has been ignoring her the entire time since their fight, so the trip has improved. Currently, the group was heading towards a nearby town to get more supplies. There was a feeling of exhaustion as this trip was weighing on people. Usually, people didn't travel this far for a journey, so only the princess was still feeling determined. "What do you expect to find in these ruins?" Han asked Ellie, who was riding in his open carriage. Looking around to make sure that there was no one nearby, she looked at both Han and Selestra. "My mother is trying to develop a device that would shift the balance for all humanoids in our favor against the overflow. Looking through some ancient documents, I discovered that this site is connected to the ruins near the academy. I'm hoping that in the ruins, we will find a weapon to pair with the ones we are creating." Ellie paused again, and checked that no one was overhearing them. "My mother believes that there is something that is actively trying to restrict technology to combat the overflow, so we're being extra cautious. As far as the adventurers know, this journey is a request from a spoiled princess that wants to play at being an archaeologist." "How do you know that I am not working with this organization?" he asked, trying to sound ominous. Smirking at his attempt to make her suspicious, Ellie retorted, "We both know that if you wanted to stop me, you could. I do not have any delusions in believing that I am a threat to you. Though you try to hold your full power close to your chest, I already suspect that you're going to be a disruptive figure in this world." Glancing at Selestra, she added, "And I know that she belongs to you, or you would not have placed that dazzling collar around her neck." Initially, Ellie was somewhat surprised when she learned that Han had claimed ownership of Selestra, considering that she saw Selestra as a very independent woman. It was a foreign concept to Ellie for a woman to willingly submit to being owned by the person they loved. Ellie responded with the mentality of, "It is none of my business, and there are stranger things in this world." So what gave you the suspicion that there is some kind of force that is exerting pressure in this world? Han asked, curious about this. When you look at the ruins near our school, and how it was destroyed by monsters during the overflow, and compare it to the evidence inside the former city, things do not add up. Looking at the murals, the city should have been able to withstand the overflow. Compared to the capital, the former city was far more prepared to fend off the endless waves. If you view the waves of monsters equally attacking all areas like it is reported in the text, a city that is fortified to fend off the overflow should be okay. But this is not what happened. For just this city and the ruins that we are heading towards, they were overrun by monsters. This indicates that something was different with these two locations. She looked at the two of them to make sure that they were following along with her logic. When my mother began to research how to protect our kingdom against the overflow, there were minor suspicious events, which would normally be ignored if it was not for how often they seemed to happen, and the timing. Whenever we would get close to making a breakthrough, there would be something small that would happen that would cause delays to occur. Mother was the first person to connect all these minor events together and came to the conclusion that someone was trying to stop us from succeeding. If a defense were able to be created, this would benefit all nations, especially since we would be providing it to them. The only people that would not want to succeed would be those tied to the fall of the two ancient cities. If everything you said is correct, then I would have to agree with you. It seems like there are spies within your borders, Han agreed. This is what has been bugging me throughout this trip. If there are spies inside of my mother's kingdom, then they should know about my intentions to investigate the ruins in the sinking swamp. The problem is nothing strange or out of the ordinary has happened, aside from the two of you, she said, smirking at Han. In my defense, I did not expect things to turn out as they had. Han tried to defend himself. He affectionately placed his hand on Celestra's hip. Well, I guess you cannot blame her to fall for such a competent man such as yourself. If I had even an inkling of such feelings, I would probably have fallen for you too, she joked.